Yo, hello, Molo, Sanbanani, hello, how's it? Shalom and Chedach. It is a suddenly very overcast and slightly windy Cape Town. I'm now driving through, what is this, Observatory? Heading into the CBD. I might be meeting, not might, I know I'm going to be meeting a good homie for the first time, someone who often is on the show here, Molemo. So I'm going to meet him later on this afternoon, but it's been a busy morning running around and doing a lot of sort of meeting some folk out in Nyanga this morning and dropping a friend off at the airport. So on the road basically for most of the day. But aside from that, I got an opportunity to pass through various neighborhoods. I can't think of their names right now, but they're sort of in the Goodwood and surround areas, in the sort of the back end of the airport. So these are sort of working class, poorer neighborhoods, historically colored neighborhoods here on the Cape Flats. And there's something incredibly depressing with the state of these neighborhoods. They are, as I say in the descriptor, thanks for that, Punisher. He's clarifying sort of Belhar and Delft areas. That's exactly where I was, and now even as I pass through sort of Observatory, it's almost the same thing at a different scale, which is, an almost. Can I put it as saying a decay in the quality of services and service delivery, insofar as trash collection, cleaning up areas, and the general state of neighborhoods, period. Lots of trash around. Yo, guys, the shocking state of the roads, it almost felt like, without playing the comparison game, but it did feel like I was driving through parts of Johannesburg, where I've been for the last 2.5 years. And not the Cape Town that we're often told, and historically I myself would have said, is slightly a cut above the rest when it comes to the general maintenance of quality, why can't I think of the word? The general state of maintenance of infrastructure. That's the word I'm looking for. All right, guys, the signal will get a little stable eventually. I'm just on Deval Pass, which I'm pretty sure because of its nature, there's not much of a signal here. But I'm going to be with you for about 15 minutes. So hang tight, share the link in the meantime. Let's get some guys, especially Cape Townians, involved in this conversation, because I want to hear from you guys as to whether you think the quality of service delivery in the city of Cape Town under the DA administration is still top notch. Maybe you're someone who's lived elsewhere in the country before and you can make comparisons, but I personally feel as though there is definitely a regression of sorts in the quality. What's your views on this, guys? And I'm going to stop very soon, just somewhere safe, so I can actually get a chance to read some of your views and some of your comments. But there's two thoughts that I'm just going to get out the way before any of that. So if you're just joining us, welcome to BDL Vlogs. This is vlog 46. Big Daddy's running around, groundwork vibes. Just spent the morning in Nyanga. Then I drove through some other areas of the Cape Flats. As I mentioned, I'm going to pull to the side because I want to have this chat. As I mentioned in the descriptor, the thing that really concerns me in terms of aesthetically what I see is, where we're often told by the Democratic Alliance that, they govern better, they get the basics right, for example. It does seem as though there is a big gulf between rhetoric and what is. Why do I say this? Well, I look at, for instance, where I was just now. As one of the guys on the lines, mentioned, sort of the Delft area, Belhar, in and around Goodwood. As I was passing those neighborhoods to get to the airport to drop a friend off, you look around and the state of the neighborhoods, man. Like you just sort of say to yourself, no, hang on, there's something wrong with this. From what we're often told, is an efficient administration, local government administration. It just didn't seem that way insofar as things like trash collection, maintenance of roads in and around areas. And I say this also as someone who drives into the townships quite a lot, the Nyangas, the Site Bs. Now, recently I've also started, there's a group I now meet in Luzugo Park. It's the state of the roads in the extremities in particular is actually quite shocking. And it's these little things which makes one question the political rhetoric of what we hear versus maybe the reality for those who live in those sort of neighborhoods. And what I find even more concerning is that even if you head into the traditionally white neighborhoods, right, you see a similar level of an almost creeping urban decay. I drove through OBS just now, and I'm happy to accept perhaps that today is a trash collection day. I'm happy to accept that, right? Because obviously there's a lot of bins outside, but there's also heaps of trash, actual trash, some in bags and some that wasn't, which kind of look like it's been there for a while, because you'd have people sort of leave their bins next to that, which kind of made me think, what's happening, dude? What's actually happening here in Cape Town? What's happening in the local government, which is, at least at an aesthetic level, you're seeing in real terms in the decaying, if you will, of the standard of service delivery. And this is a very important question to ask, because obviously on the one hand, we're heading towards a local government election, right? So that's the one part of it. But the other is, whether you can then believe claims that are made by politicians who've been in governance, that things are, if not rosy, because, no politician will say things are rosy, but if they're genuinely better than their competitors, right? Now, as a final thought, before I start reading comments, because I'm seeing them come through, and I see you awesome, Wells. I'm going to read comments just now. Give me a moment, guys. I just want to finish this final thought, and as to why this is important in particular. Cape Town, for whatever you want to call the DA, especially its opponents, the DA are the exact sort of trendy lefties that you'd find in the commentariat in this country, insofar as at a governance level, there is no difference to how the DA governs to how, for instance, the ANC governs in terms of what is meant to be done. Let me clarify that, because some people might go, what? Of course there's a difference, blah, 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 blah. No. What I'm basically suggesting is that in terms of what is meant to be done by, let's say, a local government and a provincial government, two areas of governance where the DA is in power, there is no difference between how it approaches governance to what the ANC should be doing, but they're not doing because of corruption. So, in other words, does the DA spend heavily taxed money in a very state-centric way? Yes, it does. It doesn't. The DA, for whatever you want to say about them, isn't the virtue and the example of a privatized and devolved power into the hands of the individual type government. It's not. It will be just as much of a state-centric and state-spending entity as the ANC would be if it weren't as corrupt and fleecing money away. So what do I mean by this? It has a big administration, a bureaucracy here in the city of Cape Town, hires tons of people to do various work, and there are obviously certain components of it which, yes, it may privatize, but it does exactly in the way in which the ANC, so it'll put out to tender, etc., etc. The only difference, as I mentioned, and I must point out before the Smurfs come onto this stream and absolutely go mad is, of course, the DA has better systems, right, in terms of dealing with corruption and blah blah blah. I'll never take that away from them. They do have better systems, but they are just as state centric as the ANC in terms of how it approaches governance. So, for example, the DA doesn't do creative things when it is in power. It doesn't, for example, break down the education budget in the Western Cape into education vouchers. It doesn't do that here. It does exactly what the ANC would do, which is build and fund schools as the state, fund the operations and the teachers who teach there as the state, and all decisions around education are made by the state. So in that regard, there is no difference between how the DA governs and how the ANC governs, and really is how they're meant to govern, aside from their corruption. So I just have to make that little point. And yes, I agree, Awesome Wells, the DA employs cadres just the same as the ANC. There is a strong element of that also within the DA. I speak from observed experience in that regard. And just because their cadres, if you will, happen to be competent, right, in those few instances where they do it, doesn't change the fact that the basis of DA governance is like any other political party. It is based primarily on individuals' political clout and not necessarily their competence. The competence is always secondary. In the ANC, the competence is incidental, like they don't even care. But in the DA, it is your political clout, firstly, and your competence, secondly. That is a reality. I see you, Lord MO3. I'm not going to say that second word. Shout out to you, homie, from all the way in Kakamas. I cannot wait to be in that part of the world. That's is at the N10, the N14 part of the country. I cannot wait to be in that part of the world, brother. But yeah, I just have to get that out of the way very quickly because, and again, full disclosure, I'm someone who used to be in the DA. A lot of you know that I used to be a government spokesperson here in the Western Cape for the Department of Social Development. So I do have a firm grasp of the inner workings of the party, both the flaws and the cons and the pros of it. And right now, in terms of what I'm trying to assert and suggest in this vlog, is that there is a whole lot more cons in terms of the quality of service delivery around me that I'm observing. And this is where I'm interested in finding out from Cape Townians what they think. Have they noticed perhaps a slow decline in the quality of service delivery at a local government level? I'll be very interested in finding out. And with that being said, I say that because of what I've observed. Trash everywhere, potholes, the quality of the roads, townships and, lower income neighborhoods are not looking sharp, man. There's this weird thing that the DA sometimes does as a local government and the provincial administration of trying to fob all the blame on national government. But guys, in reality, the things that I'm mentioning are all local government, if not provincial government responsibility. So what's happening, guys? What is happening? Is there a DA difference? Is there clear blue water in real terms for those of you who live in these areas? Now, granted, to be fair to the DA, I would never argue that things are exactly the same as, let's say, ANC-run metros, because things in those metros are really bad. But what I fear is that the DA is doing what lefties do quite a lot, which is tax your more well-off and the middle-class individuals to the hilt, in the name of social justice. But along the way, because of a bulky administration, because of a creme de la creme of a political elite, and because of how they structure things, very little of that money, or not as much as it should be of that money, reaches the actual poor neighborhoods that they claim to be social justice warriors for. That's my claim here. And again, I welcome disagreement. Maybe you are maybe you're someone who lives in Ekailicha, Nyanga, Mitchell's Plain, Beacon Valley is another neighborhood that I'm working in. Maybe even some of the poorer neighborhoods in the northern suburbs. Maybe you'll come in here and say, no, you're wrong. You're talking nonsense. I'm happy as a resident in those parts of Cape Town. I'm happy, right? So maybe someone might come out and say that, right? And maybe even and make a case and prove. Maybe I saw things on an off day. Maybe. And again, I'm the kind of guy who, if you present the evidence, if you present the data, I'm always open to having my mind changed on issues. So that's what I had in mind. That's what I had in mind as I was driving around, and it's been on my mind for quite a bit now, especially as I start to go into other neighborhoods around here. And I won't lie, it's I can see the slowly creeping hand of decay of a state that fails on, or if not fails, regresses on things that it argues are its responsibility and makes it their own sole responsibility. So that's my thought around this. If you're a Cape Townian, please join the chat. You're gonna have me for another let's call it 10 minutes. Because I want to hear from you on this. So I'm going to keep an eye on the comments now. And I really want to hear from you on this because it feels as though, and again, I say this as someone who's also been driving out in the leafier suburbs, and it's almost the same thing there. So let me know, guys. So I'm going to read, I see Dylan here. Twane is also falling apart. The coalition worked for a while, but they're trying to prove a point. The comment moved up really quickly. Lucanio, I see you, brother. Welcome. And thank you for the super chat, brother. You should see PE in London, he says. Hey, man, I agree. Again, I'm not taking away from the state of other ANC-run administrations. I mean, I know that DA does certain things better, but I'm looking objectively as someone who's here in Cape Town, and I'm going to be here for another month and a half or so. Vernon, during this lockdown, Cape Town has been lots of land invasions. Oh, yikes, that comment disappeared so quickly. I need to find out how to change the setting for these comments, man. I live in the Southern Peninsula. Every cent you make goes into expenses and debt. I agree, because one of the things a lot of people don't know is that the city of Cape Town is just as trendy lefty as any other administration in this country. It's statist. One of the things I have to remind people, especially those who don't know it, especially those who call the DA right-wing and anti-government. I'm like, no. The city of Cape Town, here's a quick fact. One of the largest redistributions of wealth happens in the city of Cape Town by way of what they call the indigent policy. They've got an indigent policy here, which effectively will tax and levy rates from, more higher income and middle class residents here. I mean, they'll tax them to the hilt in some cases in order to, in their view, redistribute that wealth into poorer communities. So there's no difference, as I was making the argument for, between that approach and an ANC approach. The only subtle difference, of course, is that, there's less corruption here, you might argue, but it's no different. Dwayne Schroeder, what's your thoughts on an independent Cape? Guys, once and for all, I'm going to have an episode with the likes of Phil Craig and Cape Independence. If you want to see some other episodes I've done with guys who advocate for an independent Western Cape, search on my YouTube channel. You'll see an interview I did with Jack Miller, who is the leader of the Cape Party. Oh, yikes. I might be butchering that as to which it is. So please, guys, I know a lot of you are very interested in this topic, but I do have some content on it and more is coming. But I'm talking about Cape Town right now insofar as the kind of a Cape Town that it is now. And the kind of Cape Town that it is now is one where I'm seeing a lot of trash pile up around in poorer neighborhoods, dirty fields, unkept public spaces, potholes in the road, and really a general decay in the quality, I would argue, of of living for Western Cape residents. Vernon is saying the Western Cape is struggling with an influx. I don't like that word, but nonetheless, excuse me. The Western Cape is struggling with an influx of people from the Eastern Cape. It's like South Africa. It's like how SA and poor people from Zim and other poorer countries. Again, I don't have a problem with people who move around, especially if they're moving is for better economic opportunity, right? We shouldn't have a problem with people who move, whether they're moving around internally in the country or whether they're moving, from other parts of the country. What you really want at a country level, of course, is a secure border and a way in which people come in legally. But at a provincial level, what you want is a situation where you live in an opportunity society where people come here because they know they can work, find an income, From that income build savings. From those savings, afford for themselves a better quality of life. But what we've been doing in this country is the inverse. People move for perceived better social services in their area, which creates all sorts of perverse incentives then, right? So for instance, a person in a rural part of the country will leave that part of the world because, the social services, the things that are promised to them by the state, take a very long time to reach there than they arguably do in an urban area. So things like free housing and, welfare checks that come with other, associated benefits. Those things are easier to access in an urban environment than they are in a rural environment. So I'm not surprised, therefore, when people make the move based on that. So remove the perverse incentives, right, and create an opportunity society which errs on the side of liberty. Which creates a market economy where people can get employment and, of course, an income, and from that income, build savings. From those savings, buy things for themselves, like housing and basically things that are often put into the hands of the state, but really should be in the hands of individuals who are free and income earning. So, guys, I don't have an issue with people moving around, but it's why they move around that's the issue. So you need to be careful around that language. Campo 675, Big Daddy, we are moving from Europe to the Western Cape. Bit worrying to hear this, but is it really all doom and gloom? Yeah, Campo, hey man, look, maybe as a quick disclaimer, I'm not giving advice to anybody. I'm not saying do or don't do something, but do your research, please, because it depends on where in Europe you are, but please do your research. Anyway, Dean Adams, Cape Town's problems is a cycle of failed promises, a cycle of failed promised opportunities in poorer communities. I'd agree with that. There are promised opportunities which cannot be supported due to unattainable regulations. I agree, right? And that's why I want to be charitable and fair to the DA. In as much as I also want to be critical, insofar as, if you make a promise, have a roadmap as to how you achieve that. Don't just make a promise and then find out in the commissioning of it that actually you don't hold the powers to enact that particular promise. So there is definitely a meshing of those issues which hamstrings the DA as a local and provincial administration. Elaine Fowler, an interview with Dr. Peter Hammond regarding the separation of the Western Cape would be very interesting to hear. We're also based in the Western Cape with a really fascinating background. Okay, cool. Drop me an email, please. Just as a reminder of that, because I probably won't forget once I end the stream, as to who Peter Hammond is, and I'll try and have my assistant set it up. Thank you, guys. I can now afford an assistant. Who can actually do things like set up interviews and the like. So email me, please, bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. That's bdl@bigdaddylibertyshow.com. Dwayne Schroeder, that face. Whose face? Rita Anderson. It's so sad to see the Cape being turned into a decaying state. Yeah, look, I mean, again, I want to be fair. I'm not saying that it's Mad Max out here. I'm not saying it's Mad Max out here. I'm just saying for a local government administration that often, trumpets its own horn quite a lot, and it has good cause in some cases, there does seem to be some decay in that regard, right? And it would be interesting to find out why, because I can tell you now, for someone who lives here who's middle class and who's maybe even wealthy, they'll tell you, they get taxed a heck amount by the city of Cape Town in the name of those funds being used in poorer areas. And you'd obviously then want to see some receipts, right? Insofar as poor areas looking better, clean and the like. Oh yikes, that's a fuel indicator. Yo, Fasimba's thirsty. Anyway, yeah, guys, so food for thought. Look, as I keep an eye on time, I did say I want to keep this relatively short. Even as I end this vlog, I'll be interested to then look at the comment section after this. And if you're on the stream, please share the link as widely as possible so that the people who then watch it as a video are able to contribute to the conversation. And I'll genuinely read the comments. I'll keep an eye on them. Because it's a conversation I think Cape Townians should be having, because it's kind of difficult for me if I'm in neighborhoods, especially townships in Cape Town, right? And I'm gonna be here, as I said, for another month and a half, maybe 2 months. It's kind of difficult for me to have a conversation around what a liberty-leaning society is when you have people in the DA also appropriate that language but don't govern as such, right? Because then people kind of go, hey man, I hear some of these things, right? Not everything you're saying, but I hear some of these things being said by DA people. But if I look at how the DA governs this part of the world, it bears no resemblance to the ideas that I espouse, right? So there's a danger for me in that, right? Because the DA likes to be all things to all people. You know, to the social justice warrior, trendy lefties, it wants to be trendy lefty and hip and progressive in that regard, right? They want to be liberals in the American sense of being leftists, right? And to those of us who are liberty-leaning, if you want to call us on the right, please, by all means, say that. But generally, those of us who err on the side of liberty, limited government, greater devolved power into the hands of individuals, the DA will then also appropriate that definition of liberal when it suits them. So I do have gripes in that regard, right, with the DA when it comes to that. But it does also mean that messaging can get conflated for someone like me who's in neighborhoods advocating for liberal ideas in the liberty sense. In other words, limited government, the primacy of the individual, and really elevating families and individuals over the state. So, food for thought, just a quick vlog. It's something I had in mind. I'll be really interested to see what you guys have to say about this. Yeah, food for thought, as I said. Anyway, let me end here. Guys, tomorrow, I'm going to bring you an episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Remember, the Big Daddy Liberty Show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Tomorrow, hey, I bring you the views of people I spoke to at the Move 1 Million protest. I actually spoke to some more of the people who were there to protest in a little bit more detail around, why are you here? What is this Move 1 Million to you? What does it mean to you? And, is this just another social media campaign? A lot of rah, 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 but not much in the way of groundwork. So I did pose some of those very tough questions to the organizer of Move 1 Million, the lead organizer, Jared Petzer. Yeah, and if you're interested in his response, hey man, watch the show tomorrow. That's the Big Daddy Liberty Show tomorrow, Wednesday at 7 p.m. Tune in for that. Yeah, guys, it'll be very interesting to find out, is there a big gulf? Are you having a lot of grifters basically develop? People who recognize the mood in the country, but aren't really interested in changing anything except just exploiting the mood to make a quick buck. Right? Some might even say I'm a grifter, right? Let's have those conversations tomorrow. But I've always argued that there's a very big difference between just being politics, blah, blah, and being actually politics, ideas, battle of ideas, and going into a community to do the groundwork. So, guys, join me tomorrow for that conversation on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. Make sure you join us for that. And, hey, I'm seeing Tim Flack. Shout out to you, homie, in your part of the world. Tim Flack is also on the channel. I've done some gun episodes, pro-gun episodes. A lot of you guys know I'm very much pro-gun and the easing of self-defense laws. Tim Flack is one of those voices who I'll also bring you again on the show. So, guys, thanks for joining me. I'm heading to the 30-minute mark. I'm going to wrap it off there. And yeah, guys, thanks so much. As I said, if you want to support my work, if you want to support the groundwork, please, guys, please, it's very easy. You can commit as something as little as $1 a month to my work, and it goes a very long way, guys. It allows me to, ever increasingly as I go forward, to be able to print material that I can hand out when I'm doing door-to-doors in some of these neighborhoods. Ever increasingly as the funds grow, I'll even be able to put up posters and the likes. I want to be able to flood South African communities, our townships, our rural areas, our informal settlements with basically messaging for liberty. So I'm going to be a political campaign, if I can call it that, that is 365 days in a year, as opposed to the politicians who come once every 5 years. That is how you win the battle of ideas in communities. And it is those of you who are donating, who are actually funding my work, who ever increasingly as I go forward, will allow me to do things like that, to be able to hand out things like promotional goods, put up even billboards. I'm being ambitious here, guys, that just espouse the ideas of liberty. So it's going to look like a full-on political campaign, but I'm not asking for votes. I have no interest in political power in that regard. What I'm doing is rallying South Africans around the ideas of liberty, and that costs money, but it's you guys who donate who are making that happen. So I want to crowdfund that. I don't want to become someone who's accused of taking corporate money. But yeah, so guys, for those who are donating via PayPal, via Patreon, thank you so much. The link is in the descriptor. Something as little as $1 a month is all that is required. So guys, thank you very, very much for watching this vlog 46. And I will see you guys on the next one. I'll see you tomorrow for the BDL show, as I mentioned. And yeah, guys, remember, never trust a commie.